Okay, so my previous idea that the fire signs had to occur at a divine Pentecost, which would have to be the 50 count at the end of a super Pentecost, I'm now not so sure, because the only date we've got left is Elul 14, which is a Barlean Pentecost. It's the 96th Barlean Pentecost from the fall of the Watchtower, 2005 ER 14. It's 4,800 days from 2005 ER 14, which is appropriate for the end of the contest. But I would have thought that a super Pentecost should end on a divine 50 count, but the definition of a Pentecost is just you make a 50 count after the 7 Sabbaths, so I suppose you could stretch it to a Barlean one. But the more telling reason it should be Elul 14 is that in this game with prophecy, you are always looking for something that is definite, you can rely on. Now we know when I started the contest I sent a letter, ER1, and we know that 347 days before then the Watchtower fell as a true church, because you go first, you're the majority, and the majority of prophets of Baal over prophets of Jehovah was 350, less Obadiah, less the attendant, less Elijah, which is 347. But another pivotal fixed date that we can trust and rely on is 2019 Nisan 14, the start of the lava flood, because Adam must be executed on the day he was sentenced, which is Nisan 14. But then you heat up the furnace for 7 times. Now I had thought that that meant that the Great Tribulation would all be over by Elul 14 and then nobody gets thrown in the furnace whilst it's being heated up. But that's obviously wrong. The correct interpretation would appear to be that the furnace begins, people start being thrown in this furnace from Elul 14 onwards until the lava flood, when the planet reacts to all of our global warming nonsense that we've done, which isn't only polluting the atmosphere with various gases, be it from cows or humans, it's also nuclear bombs which generate a lot of heat. So the Earth sneezes on 2019 Nisan 14 and we come off the poorer, and it's a smart flood that kills Adam and doesn't touch Abraham. I am a shield for you, says God to Abraham. So the 7 times of the heating up of the fiery furnace has to start 7 months, it's not 7 days, it's not 7 years, so it's 7 months before Nisan 14 2019, and that's Elul 14. So the furnace has to begin then, since I thought perhaps it had to end then, but there isn't time for that now, so it has to begin then. So that's when the second fire sign occurs from that reasoning. The other thing is that the one group didn't come near the other group all night long, says the scripture, referring to the Exodus. And in the greater meaning it's the Passover night. You see, normally a Passover in most people's understandings it is Nisan 14, as it was in Egypt. But the blood was put on 3 places on the door, the left and right doorpost and the lintel, which stands for 3 Passover bloods, or 3 Passovers, actually 3 marriage bloods, because the Passover is Jesus turned the Passover into an engagement party for a marriage. So 3 Passover bloods is 3 wives, 3 engagements, and 3 marriages. So the Watchtower Passover being, we thought it would begin this, and then we thought it would begin the late Passover. Then we realised actually it's a non-Adamic Passover, so it begins Sivan, which was the Zohar Passover date, and it runs for 3, Sivan, Tammuz, Ab, but then there's a late, God gives everybody a second chance, so there's a late version of the Sivan, Tammuz and Ab Passovers, which are Tammuz, Ab, Elul 14. So, to cut a long story short, the entire Watchtower Passover is not over until Elul 14, which is Tuesday, Wednesday, 28th, 29th. So the one group cannot come near the other group, so we don't see anybody until after the Passover, which is hardly surprising, because that's how it worked in Egypt. You have to complete this rather large Passover deal before you escape, and you have an Exodus after the Passover is completed, during cakes, from Elul 15 to Elul 21. Now the spies turn up, 20 days, the sentence count of Joshua 2:23, which is either 14 or 20, I can never work out which. It's got to be 20 now. after the watchtower was overturned on Ab 24, 40 days of Jonah, after Tammuz 14, the completed first watchtower Passover, because it's Sivan 14 and the late version is Tammuz 14. So 20 days after that, the spies turn up. And the nice thing about that idea, if they turn up on Elul 14, they literally do a Jonah, a Jesus, in the heart of the earth for 3 days after the Passover. Jesus is in the heart of the earth 33 Nisan 14 to 16, after the Passover ending the law. And these guys, the two spies, will be in the heart of the earth, hiding in this administration, a rather empty heart in terms, well, full of faith and interpretations, but devoid of very many members, administrative members. We are a disorganised religion. We're not an organised religion. So they turn up for the 3 days of Jonah after the Passover, Elul 14 to 16, because the Passover ends on Elul 14 rather than Nisan 14. So that's a perfect timing. I mean, I did actually think that. I had that as an alternative, but I couldn't make the fire signs fit it until now. So the two spies turn up and hide here from the 14th to the 16th, and on the 16th, Elul 16 is always a big day for the Lord's witnesses. I was born on that day. The congregation began on that day when I baptised Tony, and Laodicea began on that day when I baptised a person by the name of Roger Knight, who went and stole the baptism and founded and was the apostle to Laodicea. So if you want to expand this church, Elul 16 will be the day. So that's when Laodicea turns up. 16 years after I baptised Roger Knight. They turn up and say, aha, yes, thank you for that baptism. We made a whole church out of it. And they tell us what they did, these spies, which we've seen in the scriptures, but we have absolutely, well, little proof of, little physical proof of. Right, now the World War III is still 42 days, a bear tooth for a day, because the description of it is a bear has to get up and eat much flesh. It's got 42 teeth. It's like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, this. Satan gets authority for 42 months of Revelation 13, and the dragon, actually Satan doesn't get that authority, the dragon gets it, and then has a civil war between Satan and the rest of the demons, the globalists versus the nationalists. But World War III is 42 days, a bear tooth for a day. And the sentence count of Daniel 7:5, we've now recounted it again. I mean, I wish I knew how to count these things accurately. I mean, there's obviously a count there. It's a question of nailing it, and I don't have enough fixed points, enough reference points to be sure. I probably could have got more reference points had I spent more time at it. I also could have got them if people had told me what was going on instead of keeping me in the dark, by which I mean the watchtower people. But anyway, I count it now with 3 ribs between its teeth, being 3 plus 21, because although they're 42 teeth, to be between teeth there needs to be one either side of the rib. So there's 21 pairs of teeth which the 3 ribs are between. So that's 3 plus 21, I'm taking that as 24. And then you take the get up, eat much flesh, they say like this, that's 3 times 42 teeth, which is 126, and there's a few other bits and pieces. You end up 162. And we count it now not from Nisan 8-9, when we expelled 116 Russian diplomats from 23 countries, but from Nisan 11-12, when the Russians told us how they would retaliate and gave 7 days for the Americans to get out of the consulate, which they were closing in St. Petersburg. So I didn't know whether to take it from Nisan 18-19, when they actually left at the end of that 7 days, or from Nisan 11-12, but it works better from 11-12, when they made the decree that they should leave. They certainly were provoked at that point, so they rose up at that point. So 162 days after Nisan 11-12 takes you to Elul 24, when World War III begins, 10 days after the second fire sign, and it's also, I think, when the Great Tribulation begins, and it lasts 42 days, this war, so that takes you to Heshvan 6, which is 20 days after Tishri 16, the Mark of the Beast Day, and that 20 days is 10 kings having one thought, and so giving their power and authority to the beast. And that's 10 kings having one thought is a witness to 10 times power and authority they give. So 10 times to give power, 10 times to give authority, that's 20 times. And there's your 20 days from Tishri 16, the Mark of the Beast, to Heshvan 6, the end of World War III, when the Russians stop conquering people, stop eating flesh, and sort of cooperate with this globalization disaster that then takes over the planet. I mean, you know, one world, one village means one burgomaster, and that'll be the worst control freak there's ever been. It is, of course, a manoeuvre by the demons so that one man can control the whole planet, or one administration, for the purpose of screwing up God's plan and attempting to stop the kingdom. A futile attempt, but there's all of satanic behaviour is futile, but that doesn't stop people exhibiting it every day. So that's it. The Great Tribulation, we think, lasts 22 days, ending with the Mark of the Beast, whereas the World War III goes on another 20 days. But once Mark of the Beast is declared, people aren't worried about nuclear war anymore, but that doesn't stop the Russians doing conventional war and eating a bit more flesh till they finally decide to stop. And it's a ghastly game, this worldly politics. It really is. Not the way to choose a leader at all. So, we are now predicting second and third fire signs both on Tuesday, Wednesday, August 28, 29. The UK fire sign we think occurs at sunset in the daytime, at sunset, which is 1955 British summertime on Tuesday, August 28th, and then the US fire sign will occur in the night after that. And that's the best we can do for now. May God protect you in the troubles ahead.